So we already said database is something which is a collection of data. Okay, so let's create a table. A table is what? A group of data. So let's say I want to group all the data related to students. So I'll create a table called student. Now this student table will have some properties like ID, then name, and then date of birth, etc. So now this become my table. What's the name of this table? Student. This student table has some information which tells the details about student. So these are called fields. Different fields are there. Now I'm going to keep my first student. Name is Dev. Date of birth is 20 March. Next my student is Sam. Date of birth is 15 November. Next my student is Rob. Date of birth is 27 December. So now this can go on and on and on and on. And this table can have millions or billions of records. This is called a record. A record is what? A group of fields. So this will be called as record. Now get me? So in a relational database, we have something called entity or table. This is called table or entity. Name of my table or entity is student. The student table has what? Lots of records. Each one of them is called a record. An entity or table is defined by some properties. Those properties are the column names. So they are my, what are they? They are my fields. So a table has fields. A collection of fields, information related to a collection of fields is called a record. Now, we'll be running query on this table to get some information. That is another part called query. Like I will say, can you give me all the information related to student number 3? I don't want to see all others, only 3. So that we will get it through query. Why do we need to do query? Because there will be millions of student information. So much of record will be there. How do I get what I want? We are always keeping data in a database so that I can get the data as fast as possible. You remember we call it RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Why? I manage all the data, but they are related with each other. Keeping all the information about student is of no use if I cannot have more. Okay, I can know about student. What about the student is studying some course? Now here it comes. I need now 2 tables. One is my student. Another is course. Now let's see, the student studies in some department. So I have one more table called department. Now, why did I use these tables? They have a special meaning. Now think about it. A student can belong to engineering department, or can belong to science department, or can belong to arts department. A student cannot belong to more than one department, right? So relationship between student table and department table is what? Many to one. How do I know it is many to one? Because one department can have many students. One student cannot belong to many departments, right? So that's why we say many to one, because I am talking from student department. If I was talking between department and student, then we will say one to many. So there are three types of relations. What are the different types of relations? First is one to one. Second is one to many. And the third one is many to many. So these are three relations, because we already know now what is a table. A table is a group of fields. Those fields have what? Lots of records. Now these records are related with the records of another table. How do they relate? They relate through primary key and foreign key. We will see what is primary key and foreign key. Just we know that a record can relate to a record of another table. Now how do they relate? They relate either through one to one, one to many, or many to many. In most cases, whenever a relationship is one to one, they are all kept in one table. No use of keeping multiple tables if the relationship is one to one. Now let's see the relationship between student and department. A student can study in one department only. One department can have many students. So whenever we have to find out what is the relationship, we do what? We make like this. First we make here student, and we make here, let's say, department. Now I will say one student can study in many departments. No, one student can study in one department. Now one department can have many students. In that case, what I do, I create a relationship between them like this. One department can have many students. So this is an example of one to many. One department can have many students. Next relationship is many to many. Now student and course. Think the same thing about student and course. One student can study many courses, like they can have database, they can have software engineering, they can have programming, many courses. Now, database course can have many students, student Dave, Sam, Rob, anyone can have more than one student. So in that case, the relationship between both of them is many to many. So there what I will do, I will make the same diagram, but I'll put both sides. This is very important part of relational database, because there is what? We have one to one. Whenever there is one to one, most cases we keep them together in one table only, because it's easy to keep and easy to fetch. Second, when we have one to many, in that case what happens? The primary key of one goes as a foreign key in the many table. We'll talk about that. And next is your many to many. In many to many, what happens? When we have many to many, we can't represent between those two entities or tables. Then we create a separate table where we represent the many to many. I'll show them in the next example. Let's see first one to one. So one to one, what did we say? If it is one to one, mostly we keep them in the same table. So if I say student, ID, name, let's say first name, last name. Let's say these are the three fields I have for my student. So ID is 1, 2, Dave, okay, so I have two students. One is Dave Ron and Wade Bro. Okay, so this is my student table. These are my fields and this is my record. Next we have, this is one to one. So everything depends on one-to-one. Whenever it's one-to-one, we keep them in the same table, all information, their address, their date of birth, their location, city, postal code, everything will come as part of one record. That is what we call it as one-to-one. Now, one-to-many. So here what we will do, we will see the relationship how we model one-to-many. So we'll be having here department. So let's say I have ID name. So my department is D1 and it's engineering. Now my department is D2 and it is, let's say, software. Perfect. So I have two departments, D1 and D2. Now I want to show the relation that these students, I'm not keeping them just like that. They study in some department. So when there is one-to-many relationship, one goes inside the many. Remember, one-to-many. Now, one department has many students. So whenever there is one-to-many, one goes inside the many. So now what I will have here? I will have department ID. Okay? And then I will say, oh, Dave studies in D1, Wade studies in D1. So you can see that both the students studies in my D1 department. Now I can have more students. Student 3, let's say it's Rob Sam, and studies in D2 department. So do you see now the relationships we have modeled here? Why did we do this? Tomorrow if I say, can you tell me who are the students studying in my engineering department? I can easily say engineering department has D1. Dave and Wade are the ones studying in engineering department. Tomorrow I say, who are the students studying in software department? D2. Rob is studying in software department. So see how relationships happen. Now, whenever we do these relationships, they are done through primary key. So notice this ID field is primary key. Primary key is a field which is always unique. Remember, every student has a unique ID number. That's the reason. If you go to the taxes, everybody has a unique social security number. Similarly, everybody has a unique driving license number because that's the primary key. It is used to identify the information about the entity. So similarly, department's primary key is department ID or the ID field. Student primary key is student ID. What's the use of primary key? They are needed to create relationships also. Now see that primary key came and went inside my student entity, a student table. And now I have a relationship of one-to-many between student and department. Perfect? Now let's see many to many. Okay, now I have another table called course. Course table has ID, name, C1, let's say it's SQL, C2, Java. I want to have a relationship between my student and course. We know a student studies many courses and one course can have many students. Now this was very easy. I can't enter it here because I don't have space there. I can't capture that relationship between these two tables. So here what happens? We create a third table called student course. Here what we do? We can keep an ID and then SID. This is student ID and CID. This is course ID. This is also my table, same as entity, and this entity has, now I can say Dave and Rob, or Dave and Rob are taking SQL. So I can easily say Dave is my 1, Rob is my 3, taking SQL C1, C1. And I say Ved is taking Java. And let's say Ved and Dave is taking Java. So I can say 1, 2, C2 and C2. So do you see now how we model here many to many? I can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the way we represent many to many in a relational database management system. So we have my student and course. What's the relation between them? Many to many. Whenever there is many to many, we have to create a separate table, and the ID fields will be mapped on our many to many table. So we use the ID, the primary key from here, add as a foreign key, and both of them are mapped to a new entity or new relationship table. This is called my relationship table. So we saw 3 types of relation: one to one, keep everything in the same table; one to many. In one to many, what happens? The ID primary key of the one goes inside the many table, what we saw here in the department. And the third relationship is many to many. In that case, what happened? We create a separate table where we keep the primary key of both the tables and map them as a separate entity. So that's way in relational database we model. And there is no other relation. If you understand these 3, you have already conquered almost 60% of relational database management system, because the most important thing is about creating a relational database system properly. And if you create it properly, your tree, if the roots are right, your tree will give great fruits. So that's the most important thing in relational database management system. How do you define entities? How do you define relationships? How we create the diagram? And how you visualize it inside the tables. All websites, everything in the world uses data, and all data are kept inside a database management system. Either it is Access or SQL or Oracle, any of them will be used. They all perform MySQL, they all perform the same thing. Just you have to remember how to handle the data in a database management system and how to create the relationships between them.